Breaking news tonight, labor problems are becoming more frequent and showing up in more colonies. We'll get more on that later, but also in tonight's news, alleged indentured servant Carrie Thompson was reported missing from a landowners of a tobacco plantation in Jamestown. We'll get more on that later around 8 tonight.
Welcome. This is CNN.
Good evening. I am Virginia Morgan. I want to take a moment to thank you all for being here with us on Colonial News Network. Also joining us here tonight, we have Emmanuel Dixon, a reporter from Maryland. How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing just fine. Thank you for having me here.
That's good to hear. So, what can you tell me about the labor problems in Maryland?
Well, indentured servants are not wanting to come to America because the economy in the mother country is getting better. Therefore, the Maryland people must rely on slaves to do the plantation work, picking tobacco, picking cotton, and it's not right. They're being forcefully taken from their homelands in West Africa to work on these plantations, back-breaking labor, day in, day out, with very little pay, if any at all, and they are being tortured.
I also understand that in Maryland, their climate is not really suitable for farming. I mean, their land is not very that fertile, and they can't really seem to get any type of culture from it.
That is completely correct. That is also the reason why very few people live there, accounting for that lack of culture. Therefore, the people of Maryland need to rely on slaves. And in some cases, it is okay to rely on these slaves, but it is not overall. These slaves are being taken from their homes where they are forced to work.
So, I had a chance to interview a guy from Britain who came over here to Maryland and Virginia and visited, and he kind of gave his own opinions on what he thought of the life of a slave in here. And he said to me that the servants and slaves, they were wearing themselves down so much because they were working day to night even, and their lunch breaks would be, in only an hour or so. And he kind of goes on and explains the struggles that they go through, them not having enough to eat or just not enough sleep, let alone food or clothing. What do you think about that?
That is completely correct. These slaves are being forced to live in horrible, horrible conditions against their own will. Now, we can fix that by, paying the slaves for their work, bettering their living conditions, having them opt in and out of being taken from their homeland in West Africa. It is a very barbaric practice.
So I also want to talk about tobacco. So that's becoming a very prosperous plant that has been growing in America for quite a while now. What do you think that's going to affect the economy?
It's going to increase the economy in Maryland, but it is going to be at the expense of slaves. Now, is that really a benefit that you want? They can't even run away. In New York, the fugitive slave law is passed. New York is a free state, but it is perfectly legal in New York and all of the other northern free states to catch a fugitive slave and bring him back to the South, even when he or she has fought to get back to the free lands. So
I also understand that not all the farmers are so wealthy to take over slaves or to own slaves. The guy I interviewed also said that he saw a great famine in which even a mother had killed her child and eaten it, and she was actually hung for it. But she had blamed the governor for not allowing her the type of food and provided her necessities in order to live. What do you think about that as well for the younger farmers who are not prosperous?
As a Federalist, I completely agree with that statement. The government should be big enough to where it can provide for the people who don't have enough money, have a welfare system of sorts to give food, give water, give bare necessities to these farmers who can't make enough money, give bare necessities to these slaves who are out here working their backs off.
I also understand that smaller farmers, they work their own, whether they don't have slaves or not, and even if they do, it's maybe one or two. So they're working against side to side with them, and I understand that the women are also working within the home themselves. So what kind of state do you think upon that?
Personally, I believe that a man and woman should be considered equal. They should have the equal work. They should have equal pay for equal work. They should be treated equally in aspects of the law and in politics. Now, I know in colonial America, this is a very, very forward and progressive form of thinking, but it is not within our reach. as of yet. We can make this happen as a society. Men and women can be treated equal. If these smaller farmers are doing it, why can't we?
What do you think about the northern colonies? I mean, they're also starting to develop machinery and all of that. So why do you think, how's that going to affect southern colonies?
The northern part of the country is going to become much more industrialized than the southern part of the country. This will give them an industrial advantage over the South. So the South has to step up their game by, first, I don't know, abolishing the practice of slavery.
So how do you expect them to increase labor and meet the demands of trade today?
They could have people working in the factories. They could pay these people for their wages. Now, don't we have any other pressing news?
All right, Emmanuel, thank you so much for that. Unfortunately, we were unable to get the other reporters from all the other colonies to come and join us here today. They did, however, send their letters and opinions, and I'm going to have Emmanuel read some of them and comment on them.
So, from the delegate of New York, titled New York Labor Problems, it states that free blacks have lived in New York at risk of enslavement. The colonial courts ruled that if a white person claimed his black employee was a slave, the burden was on the black person to prove he was not a slave. Blacks on the street could give no plausible account of their movements or proof of their freedom, were often picked up by the authorities and jailed on suspicion of being runaway slaves. Local authorities had all but unlimited power in such cases. Now, my opinion on this is that it is complete and utter hogwash. If a black claims he is free, then he is free.
And how would you say how would he prove that he is free?
Why? With freedom papers.
And what if he doesn't have those freedom papers with him?
Well, then can't you just trust the word of the man?
Have we ever trusted the word of a African American?
If we can trust the word of a white man, why can't we trust the word of an African American man? It's preposterous. The racism in this society is preposterous.
Also, well, what do you think about Indians as well? I mean, they were also treated badly.
I condemn the treating of Native Americans. It is not okay.
All right. It is 7:30 Eastern Time right now, and we are going to take a short break before coming back and discussing Carrie Thompson. We just got an update on him. He is now a runaway slave, no longer an indentured servant who happened to be missing. But before that, I want to thank Emmanuel Dixon here again for joining us, and it was so nice to have you here on the set.
Thank you so much for having me.
We will be right back in just a short moment. Thanks for being with us, all of our guests. Virginia Morgan, signing off here on CNN. See you tomorrow, 6 o'clock Eastern sharp. Until then, good night. Breaking news tonight, labor problems are now becoming more frequent and showing up in more colonies.
And there is a syphilis outbreak in Boston where
No, there
prophylactics at all times.
No, there isn't. Switch the slide. I need the slidey slide. And a reporter from Maryland. Emmanuel, how are you doing tonight?
Why, I'm doing just peachy, but I have a little case of the syphilis, and I don't know if that's going to be healed in the next couple of days.